I do apologize. It is Wednesday, the 10th of June, not July. Looks like I'm getting ahead of myself there. Well, thank you for joining us for KTN Prime. I'm Nancy Kachingira, and Marisha Oiti is our sign language interpreter. First off, the National Assembly's Committee on Administration and National Security has rejected the nomination of Dr. Monica Juma for the post of Secretary to the Cabinet. The committee ruled that she displayed arrogance and insensitivity in a letter that she wrote last year to Parliament, allegedly barring MPs from her office. This came as another committee endorsed Eugene Wamalwa's nomination to the Cabinet. Patrick Amimo has more.
Interior Principal Secretary Dr. Monica Juma has been punished by the National Assembly's Committee on Administration and National Security. Her chances of replacing Francis Kimemia as Secretary to the Cabinet now depends on members of the National Assembly after her nomination was rejected by members of the vetting committee. On Tuesday, Monica found herself in a tight corner as the vetting committee fired salvos at her over a letter she wrote to the two clerks of Parliament last August complaining about frequent visits by MPs to her office. In the letter, Monica accused MPs and senators of visiting her office, requesting to have field administrative officers as well as uniformed officers appointed, transferred or retained in specific stations. Monica warned that ordering such favors would be in breach of the Civil Service Code of Regulations.
For me, it's very important whether it is true that you actually wrote to the Speaker, for instance, saying that you don't want MPs to visit your office.
In this letter, nowhere do I say don't come to the office.
The letter and the spirit of what she wrote is okay. My only problem is the examples that she cited in that letter. They look negative.
How else do you intend to get feedback on the performance of these officers? Forget about the normal appraisals, the normal way of doing things.
If any one member has felt that they were not able to proffer these complaints because of that letter, I think it is an unfortunate thing for which I am sorry about.
Despite the apology, the committee went ahead and recommended that the National Assembly should reject Monica's nomination and subsequent appointment to the post of Secretary to the Cabinet. In its report, awaiting debate before the House, the committee says the letter Monica wrote to the two clerks of Parliament was in bad faith. The members observed that although Dr. Monica Juma has good academic credentials, she lacked a practical approach in dealing with the public and elected representatives. Monica's letter rejecting MPs' favors appears to have outraged members who concluded that she displayed arrogance and insensitivity to the needs and concerns of the public and their elected leaders.
That was the first letter since independence that is written to a clerk by her PS, and it was not in good faith.
As Monica awaits her fate, members of the National Assembly debated and endorsed a report of its Committee on Appointments which vetted and approved Wamalwa's nomination and subsequent appointment for the post of Cabinet Secretary for the new Ministry of Water and Irrigation. Wamalwa now awaits to be sworn into the Cabinet any time. If the National Assembly rejects Monica's nomination, he will remain Interior Principal Secretary as the President scouts for another nominee. Patrick Amimo, KTN.
Arrogance and insensitivity, those are the reasons that this committee has given for rejecting the nomination of Dr. Monica Juma to the post of Secretary to the Cabinet. So now her fate lies in the hands of the National Assembly. What will happen? Well, let's take a quick look at just why Monica Juma may survive and win this appointment after all. It's down to a numbers game right now. And Majority Leader Aden Duale has been quoted as saying that he is quite confident that the House will overturn this recommendation. And he may have very good reason for that. Because if we look at the numbers that do support the President in Parliament, they're pretty overwhelming. Jubilee MPs are at 167, affiliated 21, Amani MPs 25. So if you combine all those three, you can really get a sense of who might vote the way of Jubilee. CORD MPs stand at 132 in number and only 4 are unaffiliated. This means that Jubilee can marshal 213 out of 349 votes. So they do have a pretty significant advantage in terms of numbers, and that's why Dr. Monica Juma may just end up with the post of Secretary to the Cabinet. Now, as we move on, let's continue to talk about Cabinet Secretaries. Suspended Transport Cabinet Secretary Michael Kamau today made an emotional defense of his integrity, saying that he did nothing wrong to warrant prosecution. He was speaking in Kieni in Nyeri during the burial of his mother, Maria Immaculate Wanjiku.
Rafiki yetu, haki itendeke, na ikitendeka na itendeke kwa watu wote. Isiwe haki inafanywa tu, isiwe ni mtu mmoja tu anazingiziwa. Tungetaka kama ni kupigana na ufisadi, ionekane kabisa ni watu wote ambao wanarengwa, sio mtu mmoja.
Go and tell President Moi that Kamau is not a thief. I did not see you during Moi's regime. And let Moi know that. Wangope, go and tell President Kibaki. The things I'm accused of are during his reign. Go and assure Kibaki that Kamau has told you that when they will appear Mzee Kibaki, muapie and appoint as PS, I did not shame you. Mungu anajua.
Well, another group of people defending themselves are the women of Nyeri, who have been the subject of mob justice on social media over cases of husband battering and violence. After the 2 latest incidents of wives accused of chopping off their husbands' privates, KTN senior reporter Carol Nyeri hit the streets of Nyeri to hear the opinions of the residents on the problem. Some of the responses may prove to be valuable eye-openers for both the men and the women in that region.
The internet is awash with pictures like these, with ridicule dominating the posts on social platforms as many wonder just what exactly is wrong on the social scene in Nyeri County. This following recent cases of 2 victims having their genitals mutilated allegedly by their wives.
Najua kitu moja, wanaume wengi hata siku hizi, kwa mfano hasa sana huku Nyeri County, na wengi wamelewa sana.
Lazima watapigwa, sababu mwingine anakwenda kunywa pombe, mwingine anakuja bila kitu nyumbani na alikuwa kasini. Sasa atafanywa nini? Siafanywa tu namna hiyo.
Is the social fabric torn? Have people of both genders abdicated their marital responsibilities? These are moral and psychosocial issues to which we sought answers from the persons in these fields. Reverend Githaiga Karaoke of the Anglican Church says there is more to it than meets the eye.
Ninaamini ya kwamba wale wote nimeona, wale wote ambaye nimesikia, either wanakuwa ni walevi.
Deep-rooted alcoholism has been pointed out as part of the problem here. But as Pastor David Ndegerege says, the social structure of today is markedly different from that of years gone by.
We have so many youths getting into marriage without proper counseling, or even getting into arranged marriages where people just decide to come and stay.
Some are also arguing that the women from this region are quite empowered at the expense of the males.
Hata ukiangalia kama Profesa Wangari Maathai, mambo mazuri ambayo alifanya, na ni vizuri kujua kwamba watu wanapokuwa empowered pia kuna challenges ambazo zinakuja. Wanafika mahali wanaume hawajakuwa empowered.
There are quite a number of young men, especially young men. There are quite a number of young men who just lay about, you know, as the women really toil and work. And then the other thing that women in Nyeri have been brought up to know is that, like for example, if something cannot be done at family level, I do it myself. I take it up myself.
The women themselves say that the issue has been blown out of proportion, that a majority of women here are simply industrious and ambitious. Wangoi Wamwangi is a councillor but also says she is a daughter of Nyeri, and Nyeri women, in her view, are a remarkable lot.
Actually, sisi wamama from Nyeri, we are really good women. It's only that, you know, like we want our men to shape up.
That Nyeri women do this. You know, there are even photos at Nyeri ahead, you know? A woman stepping on a man. For heaven's sake, it's ridiculous. We don't all do that.
Since the setup of this gender violence recovery unit here at the Nyeri County Referral Hospital in 2013, there has been an increase of victims coming out to seek help, and perhaps this indicating that there is an underlying problem. The presence of this gender violence recovery unit, strategically located at the Nyeri County Referral Hospital, perhaps betrays the gravity of the situation. Nyeri County Executive Secretary in charge of Health, Dr. Charles Githenji, says working with other departments such as the police and the judiciary has seen more people speak out, both women and men.
We have ongoing psychotherapy classes of every other time, 20 of them.
The establishment of the recovery unit has seen an efficiency in prosecution of cases.
Now we prosecute the case, it becomes very easy to convict the perpetrators.
Victims are also offered psychotherapy classes. Carol Derry, KTN, Nyeri.
Carol Derry, and there's some important insights there. This is not just a hashtag to make jokes about, it's a symptom of a much deeper problem. Now, unfortunately, the nightmare of Kenyans suffering in Saudi Arabia is back again. This time, it's the families of 7 young Kenyans who are seeking government intervention to have the boys brought back home after claims of harassment and abuse at the workplace. KTN's Timothy Otieno with that story.
Suleiman Juma left the country for Saudi Arabia in 2013 in search of a better life for himself and that of his family. A family that now says those dreams have turned into a nightmare. About a month ago, the young man resigned from his job, citing unhealthy working conditions. He was ready to throw in the towel and come back home. To make matters worse, he lost his father and brother, but says his Saudi employer denied him time to come back and offer them a decent send-off. It is such claims that have provoked the family to seek assistance from anyone willing to help.
Wanafuruswa huko kwa hiyo nyumba, wanakutwa usiku, wanaanza kufuruswa. Na maisha yao iko hatarini.
But apparently Suleiman is not alone in his plight. Together with 6 other Kenyans including Geoffrey Mwathi, Bidan Muraya, Yusuf Zani, Morris Mutwiri and Ephantus Maina, they applied to fly back home. But 1 month after filing that application, they are yet to receive any response. They accuse the hiring agency that sent them there of neglect and want the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to step in.
Complain they are being overworked, their rights are being violated, na pia time ya kupumzika hawapati.
It's a plea that is attracting attention of the Foreign Affairs Ministry.
It's a case that the agent is supposed to handle them, you know. We here at the ministry will get hold of the agent to make sure that the Kenyan is brought back home.
It's not the first time Kenyans are accusing Saudi employers of harassment, and even as Suleiman and his colleagues await to board a flight back home, it remains to be seen if the ever-strained relationships between Kenyans and Saudi employers will be sorted once and for all. Timothy Otieno, KTN.
It is about time we stopped hearing of incidents like those. Now, the fate of the Director of Public Prosecution hangs in the balance, with elected leaders still divided over his suitability to hold office. MPs deferred again today over Tobiko's handling of graft cases, even as some members of Parliament called on the President to reinstate those who have been cleared of graft charges. Aaron Acheng tells us more.
After the passing of the 60 days period given by President for investigations into the 147 graft files, focus has shifted to the office and the person of the Director of Public Prosecutions. Some have called for Keriako Tobiko's resignation over the closure of nearly 2/3 of the cases.
Your Excellency, if you want to fight corruption, Keriako Tobiko
should be nowhere around a public office for the governance of this country. That office is too big for him.
But Senate's Committee on Legal Affairs is calling for a sober approach in the manner in which the constitutional office holders are being handled, and faulted those calling for Tobiko's removal.
If the DPP in this country was to act on the fact that everybody who is named must be taken to court, we will have overturned the constitution of this republic and turned it into a jungle. And that is what the reason why we made that office independent as it is now.
Other members of the committee says EACC continued investigations on some of the files may hit a snag, bearing in mind that the body is not fully constituted.
I think it is the responsibility of Parliament, the Senate, the National Assembly to discuss with the DPP, understand the challenges that the Director of Public Prosecution are undergoing.
But in a quick rejoinder, a section of MPs from the Rift Valley say all those who stepped aside to pave way for investigations should be reinstated, since the relevant investigative bodies has cleared their names.
60 days is over. Can we know those people who have been cleared and be taken back to their offices?
They were advised to step aside for investigation to go on. Once they are cleared, then they should resume their obligation of ensuring that they serve in the specific ministries.
Almost all cabinet secretaries who were named in the graft list have been cleared for lack of evidence, and Kenyans will be keen to see the next move by the head of state. Aaron Ocheng, KTN.
Well, tomorrow is a big day. It's budget day. That's right. The government will unveil its biggest budget yet, the biggest budget yet in Kenya's history. It's taken a 17% increase from last year's budget to 2.1 trillion shillings. Let's take a look at this pre-budget poll that was done by Ipsos and see what is important to Kenyans. What priorities are Kenyans going to be looking out for? Well, the number one thing, and of course this doesn't come as a surprise, security. This is something Kenyans feel the government needs to invest heavily in. Health comes second to that, then education, food security, and then infrastructure. So this is the order of priorities that Kenyans are giving various issues in the budget. And some of the interesting things that also came up that may not be in the top 5, laptops for Class 1 pupils actually came up as a very important thing for Kenyans, and they ranked those as more important than water and the creation of jobs. Interesting. Now let's look at what Kenyans thought of the previous budget and how effective it was. Well, according to this poll, only a third of Kenyans thought that the previous budget had an impact. You can see here in red, these are the people who thought that the budget had no impact whatsoever on the lives of ordinary Kenyans, and that's 53%. And in green, 30% thought the previous budget had a positive impact on the lives of Kenyans, and 17% were not sure. Well, the budget will be read tomorrow, and we'll find out what the government is prioritizing vis-a-vis what the citizens expect to see. And of course, we'll be covering that extensively all the way from tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. We'll have lots of analysis. Also, we'll look at where that money will come from to fund the budget. So that's something you definitely don't want to miss. Now, as we move on, it's almost 2 years since the tragic Westgate terror attack. Survivors are picking up the pieces and moving on with their lives, regardless of the physical and emotional scars that they suffered on that fateful day. Today, the Kenya Red Cross Society, which is part of the Westgate Task Force, launched a new business for one of the survivors as part of an initiative to empower some of them. Najma Ismail tells us more.
It's Rachel Muriah's first official day at work, and the 28-year-old Westgate survivor gets to groom one of the top CEOs in the country, Safaricom's Bob Colimo. And looking on is her mentor, Terry Mungai, the CEO of Ashley's Hair and Beauty Salon. This was her employer before Rachel's life was turned upside down by a terrorist grenade that severed her left leg on September 21st, 2013 Westgate attack. However, today marks a major milestone in Rachel's life, a new chapter after the tragic incident. She is now the manager of Ray Raya Beauty Haven, located at the Boma Hotel. The official launch was done by the Kenya Red Cross and the Westgate Task Force, which includes representatives from Safaricom, the National Disaster Operations Center, Nairobi and Aga Khan hospitals, among others, as part of an initiative to empower some of the survivors.
When we had done the bulk of the work and paid for all the bills for all the patients, paid small amount of token to those who lost loved ones, those who were injured, and when we settled our final accounts, there was some little money that was left, but we also got Ford Foundation who were interested to look at empowering some of the survivors. And the empowerment was to say, could you give them seed money to do some work?
This salon is for hope, and even to give people hope about tomorrow. When you see an incident that has been done to your life, maybe losing of somebody's life or even getting hurt, stand by your feet and say that the devil is a liar.
It's not just Rachel who has benefited from this initiative. Boniface Mwangi, a taxi driver, was shot on the leg outside Westgate on that fateful day after he dropped a client at the mall.
The journey from that day to the recovery has been a little bit bumpy. Red Cross imejitolea wanipe kapito kidogo nianze biashara.
The Westgate Mall will open its doors to the public on the 1st of July 2015. And while some survivors say they will go, others prefer not to.
No, I won't. I won't go back for a mark of respect, not only for myself, but for the ones we lost. I wouldn't be able to walk in there.
Najma Ismail, KTN Prime.
A great initiative and a true testament of hope and resilience. Now let's go to that hot button issue we talked about earlier. A landmark ruling will see the Teachers Service Commission compensate 2 girls who were defiled by their teacher 5 years ago at a Nakuru school. TSC and the teacher will jointly pay a total of 5 million shillings to the minors in a ruling that marks the first ever constitutional adjudication of a defilement by a teacher. Here's Sharon Mamanyi with the details.
On the outskirts of Nakuru town, a woman has received some welcome news. To protect her identity, we'll call her Judy, though it's not her real name. 5 years ago, a 14-year-old girl under her care went through the worst experience any child can go through. The head teacher at a Nakuru school allegedly lied to 2 schoolgirls that he was taking them to an ASK show. Instead, he took them to his house and allegedly defiled them.
Madam alihoji wasichana wakamwambia sisi mwalimu alituambia atatupeleka show. Na sisi tulikuwa tunafikiri tunapeleka wapi? Show. Lakini venye tulienda shule ati mwalimu atupeleke show, kwanza alitupeleka kwake. Kutupeleka kwake akatuambia tuchonge viazi. Mmoja achonge viazi na mmoja aoshe nyumba. Huyu mwenye alikuwa anaosha nyumba kabla hajamaliza kuosha nyumba akamuita. Mwalimu akamuita. Ati akampeleka kwa veranda. Ati sasa kumpeleka kwa veranda si ndiye alimfanyia hiyo vitendo. Huyu mwingine ajui nini inaendelea.
Deeply injured and traumatized, the girl would not go back to school.
Anasema hata hawezi taka kuona mwalimu mbele yake. Sababu hata walimu wengine hata hakuna wakimsupport. Baada ya kumsupport ni kama walikuwa wanamchekelea.
The Teachers Service Commission traditionally has been the body investigating teacher-student sexual violence cases. Mark Washira of the Center for Rights, Education and Awareness, an institute that got wind of the case and helped the family in filing a suit, says it is time such cases are heard in constitutional courts.
Some of the prayers that we are seeking were first declarations by the Constitutional Court that sexual violence in schools denies a child the right to education, the right to health, the right to life, the right to dignity.
The case, which got the joint support of Coalition of Violence Against Women, Girl Child Network and Center for Reproductive Rights, got a landmark ruling. Justice Mombingogi granted the declaration stating that the acts of the head teacher resulted in a violation of the minor girl's rights to dignity, health and education, violations for which he is liable in damages. The ruling further stated that all acts of sexual and gender-based violence against the 2 minor girls and all students amounts to violations of their right to health, as provided for under Article 43 and Section 1 of the Constitution and Section 7 of the Children Act. For cases that have never been tried in a constitutional court, Mark says that this is a big win.
We were seeking to set a precedent. We were seeking for the court to be able to authoritatively say what should happen in the case where a teacher defiles a student. Who should be liable for that? And then what should happen to that student?
The court ruled that the minors be awarded 2 million and 3 million Kenya shillings in damages to be paid by the perpetrator, the school and the Attorney General. The court further ruled that the perpetrator's employer, the TSC, should also take responsibility, stating that despite the Teachers Service Commission having in place a Circular 3 of 2010 outlawing teacher-student sexual abuse, the same has not been effected by the TSC. In addition, over and above dismissal of sexual offenders, the TSC does not deal with the psychological trauma and stigma that the victims of such violence experience. The advocates want TSC to be held liable for such cases.
We apologize. We seem to have lost the sound at the end of that story. But a precedent has certainly been set. The question is it one that you agree with? On our big queue this evening, you may have seen the hashtag charging TSC on your screen. That's what we want to talk about. We want to ask you whether you support this ruling that the TSC should compensate students who are defiled by teachers. Go ahead and share your thoughts with us. Use that hashtag charging TSC. Send us a tweet at KTN News KE at Kachungira, or send an SMS to 22155. When you do send an SMS, start with a yes or no so that we're able to compile those responses into a poll result that I'll be giving you later on. You're watching KTN Prime. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Thank you for keeping it on KTN Prime. Mourners gathered at Gatuyeni village in Odhaya constituency for the burial of former President Mwai Kibaki's brother, Bernard Nderitu Kibaki. During the service that was held at the Iriani Catholic Church, the former president described his brother as a peace-loving and sociable person whose life will be celebrated by many. His son, John Kibaki, said that his father had been diagnosed with prostate cancer in 2003 but had recently suffered from bouts of pneumonia. Education Cabinet Secretary Professor Jacob Kaimenyi read President Uhuru Kenyatta's condolence message to the family.
Ningetaka kuwakumbusha hii ni mambo ya mazishi, na ingawa kuna mambo hayo mengine, si vizuri kutoa heshima kila siku. Jambo lingine kidogo ambalo nataka kuongeza ni kwamba katika nchi yetu ya Kenya lazima sasa tujaribu kurudisha amani. Sioni kwa nini tuendelee kushindana kila siku. Hata mtu mmoja amekufa tunazidi kushindana. Tunashindana kwa mambo gani? Kwa nini tusije tukawa watu wa kutumikia nchi hii? Kwa sababu tutakuwa katika nchi hii muda kidogo tu. Hakuna mtu atakuwa mchungaji mkubwa, kidogo tu, na hakuna haja ya kushindana, na hakuna haja ya kuwa na mambo haya yote ambayo yanatusumbua.
A celebration of a life well lived. Well, up next on KTN Prime is business, and we go to Abby Agina in our business studio for that. Good evening to you, Abby. It's an exciting bulletin. We've got the Adventurer coming up, but also tomorrow is like Christmas for the business desk, isn't it?
Oh yes, Nancy, it's indeed a loaded night for us because it's budget eve. Tomorrow we'll be giving you a quick breakdown of what to expect in this year's financial budget, and also on the Adventurer we speak to various small and medium-sized enterprise owners on their expectations about the budget. We have this and much more coming up after the break. A very good evening and welcome to KTN Business. My name is Abi Agina. Tomorrow is the day the Cabinet Secretary will unveil how he plans to spend the 2.17 trillion shillings budget he has budgeted for the 2015-2016 fiscal year. But just where is the money coming from? Adelaide Changole will be bringing to us that story in a few. She's still working on it. And let's move on. The small and medium-sized enterprise sector has been a critical driver for future economic growth. But with the sector with unbound potential, just how is the government planning to unlock the sector's potential? On tonight's special edition of The Adventurer, Charles Gitonga talks with entrepreneurs to get their thoughts on what goodies Treasury Cabinet Secretary Henry Rotich should give them when he unveils the 2.17 trillion budget.
It is estimated that there are about 7.5 million small and medium enterprises in the country, and their contribution to the GDP has increased from 13.8% in 1993 to 45% today. Out of every 100 jobs created, 92 of them are in this sector. And with the 2015-2016 budget reading happening this week, we set out to find out the expectations and views of small business owners and entrepreneurs, beginning right here at Nairobi's Gikomba Market.
Sasa tulikuwa tunaonelea at least hata kama wangetupangushia kamtumba budget iwe poa, yani at least hata kama ni mambo zitakuwa chini at least fanye biashara wanapata kitu inaweza kuwa afadhali. Ndio maisha siku hizi yametupiga geta sana.
Boss, habari yako?
Salama sana.
Tuambie jina yako na biashara iko vipi?
Mimi naitwa Fiscal Swai. Biashara naona iko mbaya sana. Kama una biashara, labda serikali ndio itaamua mwenyewe bajeti itapanga ama itapunguza kiasi gani ama imepatia kiasi gani. Lakini sana sana mimi ningeomba serikali iangalie mambo ya mtumba za China, hizo China bovu asifai.
For traders, the hope is that part of the 2.17 trillion shillings set in this budget trickles down to them. The most pressing issue for them, however, is increased market access.
Hii serikali hata ikisoma bajeti kuna ile kitu iko watu angalie hii barabara ya kuingia Gikomba juu pesa mingi huanga inaingia njia hii ya Gikomba.
Watukumbuke kwa saa hii vile tunatarajia hata sisi hiyo tusikie mabadiliko. Juu ni miaka mingi tumeteseka sana Gikomba.
Mimi kitu natarajia kupunguza bei za vitu kama material tunatumia hapa, mabati, chuma, sisi tunatumia chuma, watupunguzie bei.
The Ministry of Industrialization and Enterprise Development, under whose wings SMEs fall, is expected to receive 7.7 billion shillings in the budget. Entrepreneurs in the formal sector report that they've had a good year in the fiscal period, coming to close in July, but also expect that the government will improve on tax policy to favor upcoming businesses, even as it aims to raise 1.36 trillion shillings from tax revenue to fund the budget.
My name is Irene Wanjiku, Managing Director and Founder, Rexy Roofing Products Limited. I would think that what the government can really do is also have different kind of taxations for upcoming businesses. Like the way we have when you look at something like pay as you earn. It's structured in the way that if you are earning 15,000, you're not taxed in the same manner with somebody who is earning 200,000. So for upcoming businesses, really, we lose a lot of contracts because once you put up this figure of the 16% and also other products you're having to bring in and you're paying a certain amount of money, then it becomes quite expensive to run the organization. It becomes very expensive to meet the demands of the clients, and some will definitely walk away because the bigger organizations are able to give much lower probably profit markup because of the economies of scale as would be doing. So I don't know how this can be done, but I believe if we can dream of a budget in the tune of the trillions we are talking about, then yes, these two can be done.
My name is Maki Ongale. I run Fiberspace. Fiberspace is the company behind the brand 1963. When you hear those numbers, you really get to think that there is a lot of progress. But then you see, as youth and as citizens of this country, some of those numbers really don't matter to us. What matters to us is what we have on the table. If 2.1 trillion is what matters and is what is going to change the lives of each and every Kenyan, then so be it.
With just hours to one of the most anticipated days in Kenya's economic calendar, the entrepreneurs now expect that the mega projects set to receive the lion's share in financing will indeed change the business landscape for them. Charles Gitonga for The Adventurer.
Well, indeed, quite a number of variations there from the SME players looking forward to tomorrow. And as we had started off, the Cabinet Secretary will unveil how he plans to spend on the 2.17 trillion shillings budget he has budgeted for the 2015-2016 fiscal year. So where will this money come from? Adelaide Changoli takes a look at the options that are available and what each could portend for the Kenyan people and businesses.
The 2015-2016 pre-budget analysis in association with ICEA Lion Group.
Talk to us today to learn more about its benefits. QROP's Individual Retirement Benefit Scheme from ICEA Lion Group. In pension or in person, come on home. Unshackle your future today.
The government of Kenya appears to have mastered the art of proposing bigger and ever ambitious expenditure plans.
You know, it was 1.4 trillion 4 years ago, 5 years ago. And it's gone 1.4, 1.6, 1.8, 2.2.
This year, the government plans to spend an eye-watering 2.209 trillion shillings in the next fiscal year in a bid to lift economic growth to 7%. The money is spread around the usual list of ministries like education, public administration, security and road construction. Unfortunately, a huge proportion of this money will go towards funding the ever-rising appetite for recurrent expenditure in the government.
Our wage bill is increasing very substantially. It is increasing in such a manner that it is probably in excess of 50% of what we collect in revenues. And that is not sustainable in the long run. You know, we can't continue doing that because we will continue to have deficits increasing. We will continue to find that there's pressure on the Revenue Authority to collect because we have to meet all this expenditure.
The problem has been worsened by devolution. While the central government has retained the same number of civil servants that it had before, the counties have hired ever more people.
Effectively, we're in a sort of, you know, we're doing the same job by 2 or 3 people, which can probably be done by 1 in a sense.
Be that as it may, the government still has to find a way to raise 2.2 trillion shillings to fund this budget. And the onus is on the Kenya Revenue Authority, which will be required to mobilize 1.36 trillion shillings in the next fiscal year. Experts, however, point out that the target might be overly ambitious for the taxman, which has consistently missed its revenue collection targets previously. Moreover, the tightening of the monetary policy following the upward revision of the central bank rate yesterday could further impede this process.
So any rate hike will have an inverse effect on raising the CBRR rates, and therefore in turn we'll see that interest rates charged by banks are set to go up within the long run.
To shore up collections, the government could opt to increase existing taxes or introduce new measures to raise revenues. But Nikhil says this will be akin to double taxation on already beleaguered taxpayers and could be counterintuitive by depressing returns.
What we are not succeeding in doing is widening our tax net. We continue with the same taxpayers over and over and over again. And we have probably reached saturation point.
Instead, he proposes that the government now brings the elusive informal sector into the tax base to ease rising pressure for funds.
And again, this year I heard when the economic survey was issued, very proudly people were saying we've created 600,000-700,000 jobs in the informal sector. And I'm going to ask the question again, if you can count the number of jobs, why can't you tax them?
The state has budgeted for 103 billion shillings from appropriation in aid and plans to fund the 700 billion shilling deficit from a combination of internal and external borrowing. But with the weakening of the Kenya shilling against the US dollar, it will become increasingly expensive to tap foreign funds.
We do expect with the foreign, the fluctuations between the pair, definitely we're set to start paying out more dollars which should in turn increase the debt obligations we're said to be paying some of these countries.
This could leave the domestic market as the government's only viable option, but could potentially crowd out the private sector and reduce the already constricted credit to the real drivers of the economy.
We can't continue doing that because we will continue to have deficits increasing. We will continue to find that there's pressure on the Revenue Authority to collect because we have to meet all this expenditure. You know, one has to concentrate on that and bring it down. Otherwise, we're just going to keep putting pressure to collect revenues that are not there to be collected.
And that then brings Adelaide Changole, KTN Business.
2015-2016 pre-budget analysis in association with ICEA Lion Group.
And Adelaide's story brings us to the end of our business news for tonight. And tomorrow, do indeed keep it KTN, as we'll be bringing you extensive coverage of the budget speech at Parliament from 1 p.m. And also in the morning, Michael Karanja will also be having a panel here just discussing what to expect in this year's budget. That's all the time we had for. My name is Abi Agina. Let's meet tomorrow, same time, same place. Have a nice evening.
A very good evening and welcome to today's edition of KTN Sports. My name is Moses Swahisi. Starting us off, former World Junior and World Youth Champion Veronica Nyeri was crowned the 5,000 meters Defence Forces champion on day one of the KDF Championships at the Moi International Sports Centre, Kasarani. Meanwhile, Emmanuel Kipsang clinched the 10,000 meters race, the only other final of the day.
Day one of the Defence Forces Championships saw only 2 finals go down. The 5,000 meters women's race was the first on the card, and the lineup was not less of experience, with the likes of World Military Games champion Lynette Chepkirui, Double Africa champion Gladys Cherono and Pauline Korikwang lining up. After a few laps, the contest seemed set for a duel between Veronica Nyeri and Cherono. Nyeri, however, held on to win in 16 minutes 28.5 seconds. Gladys Cherono finished second.
Kwangu ndio narudi kwa mbio. This is my first race for this year. Yeah, that's why nimesikia imekuwa ngumu kwangu kidogo.
In the 10,000 meters race, over 20 athletes took to the track in search of a ticket to the national championships later this month. Just as predicted, stiff competition was between Emmanuel Kipsang and Stephen Arita, who have been ruling the local meetings. After occasionally exchanging leads, Kipsang emerged the best of them just 3 weeks after winning the final leg of the Athletics Kenya series in Eldoret.
The last AK meeting in Eldoret, so at least I was making some difference to see the feel of the Tatan in Eldoret and this one.
The short races on the other end brought together the best sprinters the Defence Forces has to offer. 400 meters Commonwealth champion Mark Mutai won his heat in 46.80 seconds. In the last heat of the 400 meters race, Alphonse Kishoyan bagged the win to keep his hopes of a World Championships ticket alive. He's fresh from attaining qualification time at a race in Belgium.
World Championship, at least at the finale. Yeah.
After an action-packed day one of the Kenya Defence Forces Athletics Championships at the Moi International Sports Centre, Kasarani, the championships will enter day 2 on Thursday and eventually come to an end on Friday, when a team to the national championships will be named. Lynn Washira, KTN.
Moving on. Football Kenya Federation Premier League side Posta Rangers will be represented in the national team Harambee Stars. The club goalkeeper Ian Otieno was named alongside Gor Mahia's Boniface Oluoch. Otieno replaces international Arnold Rigi, who did not manage to travel to Nairobi in time for the Sunday's Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers match against Congo in Brazzaville. Kenya is in Pool E together with Zambia, Congo-Brazzaville and Guinea-Bissau. According to FKF, Origi did not honor his call since he is in the process of acquiring dual citizenships. But the Norway-based player rubbished those claims. Origi said on his Twitter handle that FKF did not seek his release early. The Stars depart for Congo on a Friday afternoon. To matters rugby, the final countdown of Rugby World Cup kicked off today at the Twickenham Stadium with the launch of the 100 Days Rugby World Cup Trophy Tour. The Rugby World Cup Tour will visit 300 events, including rugby clubs, sporting events, school communities and festivals, including iconic landmarks. The trophy will be celebrating rugby and hosting Rugby World Cup 2015, providing as many people as possible with the chance to engage with the tournament. The Rugby Trophy Tour will spend 5 days in Scotland, 5 days in Northern Ireland and 5 days in the Republic of Ireland, and then 10 days in Wales and 75 days in England. And with that, we wrap up for today's edition of KTN Sports. My name is Moses Wahisi. Have a lovely night.
KTN Weather in association with Mortein Dew.
Mama has Mortein Dew, which makes mosquitoes go away and not come back the whole night. So you get a peaceful night's sleep all night long.
Mortein Dew. A peaceful night is a Mortein Dew night.
Well, it's about that time we wrap up the bulletin, but not before we go back to our big Q. Our hashtag tonight was charging TSC when we're asking you whether you support the fact that TSC has actually been charged in a defilement case along with the teacher who committed the crime. Well, thank you for your feedback. Let's take a look at the poll results. 86% say yes, they do support this ruling that the TSC should compensate students defiled by teachers, and only 14% say no. Thank you very much for your feedback this evening. Let's take a look at some of it now. An SMS came in from Kivuti, and yours was a no. You say the culprit should meet the costs in totality. TSC is not the only employer whose staff molest children. Will the government and parastatals do the same? What of private employers? We need to be real. Well, thank you for your SMS. There's a yes here that says they should be charged since they've been keeping such criminals employed, hence indirectly supporting these acts. And another yes here says the TSC should compensate, even goes a step further to say they should recover the money from other teachers so that they know that they are liable when one of them misbehaves and are covered by their colleagues. And a no here from Kawira in Meru. Thank you very much for sending in an SMS, and you say no, TSC has nothing to do with this. It is individual responsibility. They should be held responsible to discourage such. Well, thank you very much for sharing your opinions with us on KTN Prime this evening, and of course for watching the program. We look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Marisha Owiti was our sign language interpreter, and I'm Nancy Kachingira. Coming up next is Jeff Koinange Live, and it's of course, as always, a very, very, very hot bench. Barack Muluka is on the bench tonight, and that's something you certainly want to stick around for. For now, though, from the KTN News Center, it's good night.